Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to a Facebook Live and Instagram Live. I'm going to go live in Instagram in just a second and YouTube Live. We haven't done this for a while. So let us know that we're live and you see us, and we will get started. I know that many of you are caught in home. Maybe you don't even want to be home, but here you are. And so this might be your opportunity to learn some things about when caring for someone that you love becomes caring. So we don't want that to happen, and we want to define that. So let's just wait for a minute to make sure that we're live. I know some of you are having tech problems with no electricity, no internet, all of the above. So we decided to do this anyway in case you were sitting home and you did have electricity and you weren't going to work. Hi, Instagram. See on Instagram we're live, but I still don't see that we're
great.
live.
I see a couple people here on YouTube. I don't see anybody on Facebook yet, but if you're here, let us know and maybe tell us what's going on out your window.
Okay, well, we're going to get started. I hope Facebook is live. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is really important. How many of you are moms? How many of you are moms? I have a cough drop that I'm going to have to take out of my mouth. I can't talk with a cough drop in my mouth.
Yeah, Leslie and I are both under the weather, so we may be using cough drops today.
Yeah. How many of you are moms? Here we go. How many of you are moms? Say yes, I'm a mom. I'm a mom. Yeah. All right. So if you're a mom, answer this question. You have two children. One child can't walk. Maybe they're an infant. And so part of your caring for them means that you carry them. You carry that baby lovingly. You want to carry that baby. But as the baby gets bigger, and even sometimes when it's a really little baby, your arms get tired. And maybe you can't carry that baby anymore because you're tired and you have to put it in the stroller, or you have to put it in the bassinet, or in the little chair or swing or whatever you have. You can't carry it 24/7, right? You're not capable of that. God didn't wire you to be able to have the strength to carry anything 24/7. Doesn't mean you don't care for that baby, you do. But what's the difference? And even if that baby got to be a young child and they were unable to walk, how long could you carry a 40-pound child, 45-pound child, 60-pound child, 80-pound child? You couldn't. You couldn't. You would have to get that child a wheelchair or something to create a place to put them so that you could take them places, because you can't carry them anymore. That doesn't mean you don't care for them. You do. But what about a child who refuses to walk? We've all had them. Sit down in the middle of the mall. Mommy, carry me. I can't walk anymore. I'm tired. And that 40-pound child or that 60-pound child, maybe you put them on your back or you carry them a little bit, and then you can't. And you put them down and you say you have to use your own two legs. Now, answer the question. Is that unloving for you to stop carrying them? Is that unloving? Does that mean you don't care? Yes or no? Somebody on Instagram said, some do carry a 40-year-old child. Exactly. That's why we're on this. That's why we're on this webinar, because we've confused, as good Christian women, caring with carrying someone.
Nope. I see nope happening in YouTube. No, it's not unloving to say, I can't do this anymore. When you have a newborn, they're what, 6, 8 pounds, maybe 9, 10, but your arms get stronger as they grow, right? But every woman at some point reaches a point where they can no longer carry that child, right? As our arm strength grows, we have limits. All people, all human beings have limits. And then it's important to tune in to, what is my limit here? And when is it no longer helpful, not just for me, because I'm going to crumble under that weight, but when is it no longer helpful for that other person to be carried?
Yeah. And so Susan and I picked out some verses for us to look at. And so, Susan, if you would share those verses in Galatians, I think this is really important, because I think Christian women have been taught incorrectly about this in terms of marriage.
Yeah, so I'm going to start. I'll just read it right out of my Bible, Galatians 6, starting in verse 2. It says, "Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. For if anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. But let each one test his own work, and then his reason to boast will be in himself alone and not in his neighbor. For each one will have to bear his own load." So we've got here, he's talking about bear one another's burdens. And then he says, each one has to carry his own load. And it may sound like those are contradictions. It may feel confusing for many. So we would just want to hang on these verses and really flesh out, what does it mean? What is Paul saying when he says these two statements?
Yeah. What do you think? Because I think this is really important. How many of you are tired of carrying somebody, their load? That you're carrying a load for someone that they should be carrying for themselves, right? Whether it's financially. I just did a blog last week for a woman who carried the load financially for her entire family because her husband refused to work, right? He didn't want to work. And he expected her to work not just one job, but two jobs so that he could go play and do what he wanted to do. And she was exhausted, as she should be. But biblically, she was feeling guilty, like somehow she was failing her role as a loving woman, a godly woman, because she was starting to feel resentful. She was starting to get exhausted. She was getting sick because she couldn't do it. God didn't wire you, make you, want you, ask you to do it. Each should carry their own load. Her husband wasn't an infant. He was perfectly capable of working. He wasn't in an accident with a head injury that he couldn't work. And even if he was, it's still stressful to carry someone when you don't have the capacity to carry them. Mm-hmm. Right? So even if my husband had a heart attack, he weighs a lot more than I do. I couldn't carry him. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't. Mm-hmm. And there's no sin in understanding you have limited capacity to carry someone else, and it's okay. That doesn't mean you don't love them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when Paul is talking about burdens, it's talking about more like suffering, temporary crises, temporary overwhelm for particular reasons. But then when he talks about your own load, he's talking about your own responsibilities, your own personhood, taking care of your own emotions, your choices, your character. But I think this is where it can get confusing for some women in destructive relationships in particular, is because some people can skew this crisis and suffering. They may be creating it themselves and then asking for a rescue, right? They may be throwing up their hands and claiming that they're a victim, but they may not be a victim. Or maybe they're a victim of their own choices, looking for a rescue.
And why is it as Christian women, as good Christian women, we feel like we need to be the hero? Like somehow that's a noble sacrifice. We call that dying to ourselves. Your pastor, your Christian counselor may call that dying to self. Like, you just need to die to yourself and suffer for Jesus and be sacrificially loving and blah, 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 blah. If you're going to sacrifice, so when loving you hurts me, and sometimes that does, when loving you hurts me, make sure it's a noble sacrifice. So if I'm going to, like, I just offered to pay for someone's something, right? I won't go into details. And so that means I can't buy myself something that I might have bought myself because I'm sacrificing my money to pay for their good, right? But it's for their good. It's not to buy them drugs or alcohol or for them to go party. It's for their good. It's for them to take a class that I think would be really helpful for them, right? And so I'm willing to forsake dinner out for a couple of weeks or whatever to pay for this. So when you're sacrificing something of you, whether it's your time, your money, your energy, your wisdom, make sure it's for another person's well-being and not for them to be lazy or for them to not do their part of what they have to do to get well. And so often we carry people because we've been taught that that's what loving looks like. If we're a Christian woman, usually it's the woman who gets more of that than the man. But I think men get it a little bit too. But I think it's really important that we understand that love doesn't mean that you function taking care of someone else who's perfectly capable of taking care of themselves, emotionally, financially, physically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm wondering how many this is impacting. Have you been taught that if somebody's struggling, it's unloving to step back? I know that I've heard that before.
Mm-hmm.
How many of you have heard that? It gets confusing sometimes when you're told that.
Yeah.
If somebody else is upset, you got to step in and fix it. Or if a hard consequence is coming to them because they made a mistake or failed, that you need to prevent that consequence because they can't handle it. But that's not true.
And maybe they can't handle it, but maybe they need to learn to handle it.
Mm.
Right. And so I think sometimes, it's just like sometimes, and again, with moms and children, it's easier for us to get it this way than husbands to wives. But if our child is struggling with their math, by you stepping in and doing their math for them, that's not helping them. We know that. We know our child needs to learn their own math, or they need to learn to read their own book. For us to read for them or write for them or do their math isn't going to help them grow and mature, right? So for us to step in and do our husband's work for them or try to, we can't. We can't do our kids' math for them. We can do their homework for them, but we can't they don't learn their math if we do their homework for them. And so sometimes letting your child fail or get the consequences of a poor choice or they're not studying helps them learn, hey, I've got to get some extra help. I've got to get tutoring. I've got to learn math because my mom's not going to step in and do it for me. But what about in marriage? What is it about us feeling like I've got to keep the peace? I've got to make sure he's not upset. I've got to calm everybody down. I've got to make sure the environment is so perfect that when he walks in, he doesn't get dysregulated in any way. Because if he gets dysregulated in any way, it's my fault that I didn't keep the environment perfect. Well, that's exhausting. That's exhausting. Who can do that?
As you're talking, I'm picturing these 1950s housewife ads, right? For vacuum cleaners, the ones that were in the magazines, right? That is what the teaching was, right? Put on your dress and your pearls and make sure the house is vacuumed and the kids are quiet so that when he comes home, he can enjoy a hot meal and relax, right? That is it.
Your job as a good wife,
right,
is to make sure he's okay. Now, there's a smidgen of truth to this, that as a partner in a marriage, you're not intentionally trying to antagonize the other person, or that's going to lead to a war zone for sure, right? And so if there are things that you can do that you know are great for them and all of that, and you have the capacity and energy to do them with a willing heart, do them. If I don't cook anymore, but I used to cook. Now my husband's cooking. Once he retired, I said that was his job. But when I would cook, I might say, hey, are you hungry for something? I'm happy to make him a meal that he wants if I want to make a meal that night, all right? But I don't feel like I have to or I'm going to get in trouble. I have to regulate his emotions to make sure I have dinner on the table the way he wants at 5 o'clock in the evening. And so pay attention to yourself. That are you living under a false burden that not only is your husband mad at you if you don't do it, but God is mad at you. Right? This is a false burden that so many Christian women live under, that I'm not a good wife if I cry uncle, not just because your husband says you're not a good wife, but somehow God says you're not a good wife, that you've failed God because you've not lived the noble sacrifice and slit your wrist and given your blood for him. And again, if you can donate blood to someone who's needing blood and it hurts you a bit to do it, do it. But if you're donating blood for someone who's on drugs and being irresponsible with their life, maybe that's not such a good, smart choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought I would just offer some words about what does caring look like, just to kind of flesh out the difference here. Caring allows growth. That's what Leslie's talking about. It also allows you to stay connected to yourself. It honors choice and it offers empathy. When we move to carrying, we go to absorbing responsibility, preventing consequences, managing other people's emotions, and that requires you to erase yourself. Is you don't have a self because you're so invested in somebody else's self.
Well, and I think not the scripture teaching, but the church's teaching of the role of a wife is exactly that you are a role. You're not a person. So erase yourself and be the role. Put on the apron, be the smile, be the sex object, be the maid, be the caregiver, be the sympathizer, be the rescuer, be the worker, whatever you have to do. That's what you have to do. That's your role versus who are you and what did God make you to be and do?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, Susan, I thought it might be fun, and then I want to open this up for questions. Do you have any questions about this? How many of you are in confusion about your role as a godly woman? Let me just say two things. Your husband may be unhappy if you start putting some boundaries down for sure, but maybe God won't be unhappy. Maybe God will say, good for you, girl. I've been trying to grow this man up for years, and you've been stepping in the way. I've been trying to help this man become a better man, and you have put all kinds of pillows around him so he doesn't have his feelings or ego wounded. Right. And so maybe God is saying, step out of the way, overfunctioner, and let me teach this man some things about being a man. And is he going to be angry? Is he going to be throwing a fit? Probably. Right. But that doesn't mean God's mad at you. It might mean your husband's mad at you. And so you have to learn to deal with that. And if it's a dangerous mad or a scary mad, you need to learn to get safe.
Mm-hmm.
Some of you are in that situation. But I thought that it might be helpful, Susan, for us to just do a little role play. And I thought in front of them, maybe as a woman might say, how can I be caring, caring, and not carrying? I would like to do a little role play where maybe you could play the husband, I'll play the woman who's went to this Facebook Live, realized, oh my gosh, I've been over functioning and I've been trying to be the hero of your story. And I've got to have this tough conversation where I'm not going to do this anymore. And you're going to try to manipulate me into going back to my old ways and taking care of you. And I'm just going to give you some words or some ways that you can stay strong and still care and still care. Because what happens is you guys get fed up, fed up, fed up, fed up, fed up, and you say, I'm not doing this anymore. Done. I'm done with you. And then we feel guilty because now we've totally lived outside of our own values and we haven't acted like a caring self. We've acted like a maniac. Mm-hmm. And we feel bad. And our husband thinks, oh, she's just PMSing. So he doesn't take anything seriously that we've just said. And then we're back in the same dance because I'm sorry I said that. And now we're back into that old dance and nothing's changed.
Mm. All right. So we didn't practice this beforehand.
We didn't.
So I'm just
giving you the easy part. Yeah. Maybe
coming up with a scenario here where I'm going to try to manipulate Leslie into taking care of me.
Yeah.
Okay. Honey, did you wash all my socks? I don't have any more for tomorrow, and I'm going to need fresh socks tomorrow.
Actually, I didn't. I'm so sorry that I didn't even know you needed socks, but I've been busy all day with doing, things I had to do and my own work, and I didn't get to your socks. But they're in the wash, and, happy to show you how to work the washing machine if you want to do them.
Well, I've been at work all day and I'm exhausted and I plan to watch TV tonight. So I'm going to really need those socks. And I mean, it's your job to do the laundry. I don't ever do the laundry. So I think I'm going to be looking for those in the morning.
Now here, I'm going to put a little parentheses. If that's true, and if it is my job, if I'm a stay-at-home worker and he's the outside worker, it may be true that it is my job, and that so that I might say, you know what, I am happy to do your socks on laundry. So I'll give a couple of different answers. I'm happy to do your socks, but laundry day was yesterday and your socks weren't in the hamper. And so I didn't know that you needed socks and your socks weren't in the hamper. And I did all the laundry yesterday. So if you've got dirty socks somewhere, like under the bed or in the garage or in your car, or wherever they are, you need to get them in the washer and do them, because I did laundry yesterday and I'm not going to do an extra load because you didn't get them to me. Right. So that might be one answer if it is my job to do the laundry, because sometimes it is your job. And so it is. And if it's within your power to do it in a good way, you can do it. But I'm just giving you some ways to say no. Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, my socks probably are in the gym bag, or maybe they spilled out in the car. And, I think I saw some under the bed, but still, I can't keep track of all of that. I just know that in the morning when I open my drawer, there's not going to be clean socks in there.
I don't think I can keep track of your socks. That's not my job to keep track of your socks. So I am happy to do your laundry if it ends up in the hamper. But I don't think it's my job to keep track of your socks. So if you want your socks done by me, then you're going to have to keep track of them and get them in the hamper on laundry day, which was yesterday.
So what I'm hearing you say is you don't care if I'm embarrassed tomorrow at work, and you don't care if I feel angry about this.
I care, but I'm trying to express to you that I have limits to what I can do to take care of this household and take care of you. And if you don't want to be embarrassed tomorrow, you can gather your socks and throw them in the washer. That's not a big deal of time. You still can watch TV. You just have to throw them in the washer, put some soap in, and then take them out of the washer and put them in the dryer. That would take you maybe 10 minutes to do. So you still can watch your TV program and have clean socks. So the embarrassment issue isn't my problem. That's something you can take care of pretty easily tonight. But my problem is I don't want to be responsible for collecting your socks. I will do my job, which is the laundry.
I think you did a great job with that, Leslie. Defining your problem. I think it's so helpful to define your own problem.
Right.
Instead of focusing on what my problem could have been, right? My anger, my fear of embarrassment, all of that.
So those are things that we want to teach you in a webinar that we're doing. I'm doing it on February 10th. And if you can put that URL up there, if it's up there, I don't it's so small I can't see it. Yeah. When we're doing a free webinar on February 10th, I'm doing a free webinar. When you're not okay, like he's not okay now that you didn't do his wash, I'm not okay. Right? How many of you can relate? When he's not okay, why didn't you do my wash? Or, hey, I'm upset with you. Or, I need sex and I don't care if you just, broke your leg or had a baby or whatever. You have to make me happy, right? Whatever it is. When he's not okay, you're not okay. You get anxious, you get fearful, you get compliant, you overfunction, you get confused. And so I want to talk about that. And what is his problem? His problem is he doesn't know how to collect his socks. What's my problem? He thinks I'm just a maid in this house. I'm not a maid. I will be happy to do my job. You can do your job and we can function better together. Mm-hmm. And how do I stick up for myself? So what is our problem? So we're going to talk about 3 problems. What's his problem? What's your problem? What's our problem in this workshop? And we're going to teach you how to discern that. I've just created a brand new workbook. So if you've attended things before, you know that you'll get a lovely workbook that you can use afterwards. That will really help you remember what you learned in the workshop. It's entirely free. We want to gift this to you because we know this is a problem for Christian women in the Christian community, but you have to sign up to attend. So you go to leslievernick.com, join webinar. leslievernick.com, join webinar. It's February 10th. We're doing 2 live sessions, one at noon Eastern time, just like today, and then one at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. And it'll be about a 45-minute, 50-minute teaching workshop that you will, again, have a workbook to fill out. Then we'll do about an hour Q&A afterwards. So we really want to help you learn. In this Facebook Live, it's hard because we, can't always say all the details that we want to say in the short time that we have together. But we want to really give you written information. What does the Bible have to say about this? because we understand that your husbands may not be okay. But it's not your responsibility to make sure he's okay. It's his responsibility. It doesn't mean you don't care. So we can care. I can care about his socks. I'm happy to do his socks. As long as they end up in the hamper, I'm happy to do them. Right? But I don't have to treat him like he's an infant and go collect his socks. That's not my responsibility. That's his responsibility. If he wants his socks washed, they need to be in the hamper, right? Or he can do them himself. Those are his choices. And so instead of me knocking myself up, showing I care for him by doing what he wants all of the time, I'm just enabling him to be selfish and disrespectful and lazy. Why would I enable that? Right? He wants to watch TV all day or all night because I worked hard all day. Well, I worked hard all day too. Right? And maybe I want to relax and do something I want to do. But no, I got to go wash his socks and go collect them first out of his gym bag in his car because otherwise he's going to be mad at me. And if that's similar to your life, then raise your hand and attend this webinar because this will help you clarify in your mind. Now, he still might not like it. He didn't like it. But I didn't have to be snarky. I didn't have to be mean. I just had to be really clear. And clear, Coach Leanne says, clear is kind. Mm-hmm. Clear is kind. I just need to be clear. This is what I will do, and this is what I won't do. Mm-hmm. And when we can do that in our relationships, whether it's with our children, whether it's with our in-laws, whether it's with our spouse, our relationships can flow so much better than when we think we have to fix it all, do it all, make it all happen for everybody, carrying them because they won't walk for themselves. He can do his own socks, get them in the hamper. That's an adult responsibility. It's not my responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm seeing in the chat, what about for more serious topics, right? We use something pretty benign here, right? Socks. Mm-hmm. But I think this applies to more serious topics too. It gets a little more challenging perhaps, and the consequences are maybe more difficult because somebody else's irresponsibility sometimes lands on you, the consequences. And then also I'm seeing in the chat, Leslie, that answer would have caused an explosion in my husband. Mm-hmm. Yes. So Leslie said he might not like it. And sometimes destructive people get bigger and louder and more belligerent to scare you into going back into your old ways. So I thought about doing that. It doesn't feel good for me to do that, even pretend here on live, right? But I could have gotten bigger and louder and more bullying. But I think Leslie still could have found safety for herself. And what may end up happening, instead of her kind words and staying in the conversation, she may have decided to take a breather, mm-hmm. to create some space and to walk away.
So if Susan had gotten bullying or she had started threatening, all that kind of stuff. So you think you're a princess here and you can just do what you want, all those kind of things, and get really snarky or get loud and say, I pay the bills around here. You're going to wash the socks, however they're going to do that. I think you can say, wow, I can see you're really angry right now, and I'm going to take a break from this conversation. That's all you need to say. And these are the things that we teach you what to do. And if you've had a history of him being scary, violent, then of course you're not going to have that conversation. You shouldn't be in that house, mm-hmm. right? So we give you the discernment to kind of know, I know that if I push his button or if I say no, this is what's going to happen. And if you know what's going to happen is life-threatening, then don't say no. Someone's got a gun to my head. I'm going to say, where's your socks? I'm happy to do them. Let me find them all over the house. Of course I'm going to do that in that moment. But I'm not going to have a relationship with this person. I'm going to recognize they're dangerous and they're my enemy. They're not my spouse. Mm-hmm. And I got to get out of there. I got to get safe. Mm-hmm. And God even tells us to love our enemy, care about them. He doesn't say we have to live with them, share a bed, a bank account, or a body. And that's what marriage is. You're sharing your bed, your bank account, and your body with someone that is intended to be your closest companion, that you trust them to do you good, not harm, all the days of your life. That's what God designed marriage to be. Not this Hollywood romantic, kind of thing. Marriage isn't like that. But what you have in a good marriage is a foundation of trust and safety. And if you don't have that in your home, then understand that is not God's design for marriage. Now, sometimes we just make do and it is what it is and all of that. But if it's dangerous for you, please don't feel that God requires you to stay. He does not. The prudent see danger and what? Sacrifice themselves? No. The prudent see danger and take refuge.
Mm-hmm. Enrica says, I thought standing up for yourself was a sin. It was just being mean.
And we can do it in a mean way. Like very snarky. Who do you think you are? You're the king of the castle. I'm not bowing to you. You're a jerk. I could say that. And that would be me. So how can we be caring and still say no? And I think as moms, we understand that we can do that. No, you can't have a cookie, right? But that's a power position over a child where we get the authority to say no. Mm-hmm. But in marriage, we don't have that authority over him, and he doesn't have that authority over us that we're not allowed to say no. Okay? Adam didn't exercise authority over Eve, saying, you're not allowed to talk to that serpent. Now, she made a mistake for sure, but God gives us each choice, agency. And so if a husband is using his authority to say you don't have a choice as a wife, he's misusing scripture. That's not his authority to take away your choice. Even God doesn't take away your choice, and your husband isn't God. And these are all biblical principles that I want to go through with you in the workshop. So if this is resonating for you, if you're a Christian woman who wants to honor God, who wants to, even if your husband doesn't like you, you want to be confident that God is saying, good girl, you're doing a good job, girl. You're living with a fool. Abigail lived with a fool, Nabal, in the Old Testament, right? And she was honored. She was honored. And she was used by God to help David not act like a fool, right? And so don't feel like just because your husband's mad at you, God is mad at you. Even if your husband knows scripture and uses it, he's twisting it and misusing it, that you're to be just a doormat and he gets to be the king. That's not God's design for marriage. So if this is you, please sign up for the workshop and come, because when he's not okay, I'm not okay. I understand when someone you're living with is angry all the time, you're going to be anxious all the time. They just go together, or angry. And then it's like a war zone in your house. That's not what God wants. But what do you do different? Do you just be compliant and be like a prisoner of war in your marriage? No.
Mm-hmm. You know, when I was preparing and, reading that Galatians 6 section of verses, what really stood out when it says, in this way you fulfill the law of Christ. And I was thinking, what is the law of Christ? It's to love well, but even Jesus has limits in his love. It's to love in truth, right? Truth is important, and freedom is important. Freedom is important in relationships. So Jesus never managed people's emotions. He never prevented consequences. He didn't take responsibility for choices he didn't make. He allowed people to be who they were. He allowed Judas to be who he was. He allowed Peter to be who he was. But at the same way, he drew near to people in their suffering. He spoke truth with clarity. Mm-hmm. And he left space for them to step into self-stewardship or not.
Yeah, I think that passage in John chapter 5 has always been one that doesn't confuse me anymore now that I understand the Bible better. But when Jesus asked this man who'd been paralyzed for 38 years, he didn't just go, oh, I know you need to be healed. I'm going to heal you. He didn't do that. He said, do you want to be well? I'm going to say something that maybe you're not going to want to hear, but sometimes there's a payoff for staying sick. Mm-hmm. There's a payoff for staying sick. Maybe your husband gets you to be the slave if he acts like a sick, helpless victim. Or you get to stay in a sick, helpless victim stance. Okay, there's nothing I can do. Poor me. There's a payoff to staying sick. It's not a healthy payoff, but there is a payoff. So this man was paralyzed for 38 years. Who wouldn't want to walk? Well, maybe his payoff was, hey, I don't have to be responsible. I don't have to work. I don't have to take care of myself. People have to take care of me. I can beg for my life. I don't have to really interact with people. And so Jesus says, do you want to be well? Not just do you want to walk? Because Jesus knew he could fix this man's legs, but he couldn't fix his life. This man would need to fix his life. Do you want to walk and fix your life, sir? Because if you have legs and you can walk, you're going to have to get a job. You're going to have to start earning a living. You're going to have to start functioning as a man. Do you want to do that? And Jesus asks these questions of us as well. And when we overfunction for a sick man and prevent them from learning, hey, I have choices too. Do I want to grow up? Do I want to mature? Do I want to be responsible? Do I want to be loving? Do I want to be a good father or a good mother? These are choices God gives you. You don't just live in reaction to life. I mean, our culture lives in reaction to life, but we don't have to live that way. God gives us another choice. And we want to teach you that path. Because just like your husband may be reacting in negative ways, you might be at the point where you're reacting in negative ways too. Mm-hmm. Whether it's blowing up and calling him names, or you're shutting down and becoming depressed and drinking at night to calm down and have sex so that you can do your wifely duties and be numb. Is that the life that God has for you? No, not at all. And so we have a question here. If you have a question, and this is a kind of a touchy topic, so if you don't want to put it in Instagram, or you don't want to put it in, I still don't see we've loaded Facebook. I'm not sure what's going on with that. But if you don't want to put it in YouTube and you want to ask a question privately, you can do that by just submitting the question at, go to a link at leslievernick.com/question/. Just go to leslievernick.com/question/. And that'll take you to our monitor, then you can write your question to the monitor, and she won't put it on Facebook and it won't be on Instagram. And so nobody can see it, but we can answer it for you. So let me ask the first question, Susan. It's, okay. I've been walking a tightrope for almost 3 years as my destructive husband alternates his favorite child between our two youngest children. They are 20 and 18 now. He refuses to participate in our marriage and in parenting. It's been this way for 20 years. He's taken our youngest as his best friend, talks to her as a spouse, and rejects her 20-year-old and me. I'm tempted not to parent our 18-year-old because it makes her mad at me and she runs to her toxic dad. Do I continue to walk this tightrope, or do I parent my 18-year-old as I've parented my other children, knowing that if I do, she will run straight into the fire with her dad? I'm in Empower to Change, so thankful for your ministry. So Empower to Change is one of our coaching programs. So yeah, Susan, you want to answer that?
That's a big question. So what I'm hearing is that you're put in this position where there's triangulation happening in the household. And I think it can be easy to focus on that problem, the triangulation, and you lose focus of who you are and what's important to you. So when you said, should I just continue to parent? I've parented my other children. I think that probably focuses you back into what we call your noble self, right? Your gifts, your strengths, your talents, your values, your virtues. And that's always a good place to go. It sounds like you're afraid of the consequences of that, which then prevents you from being the woman you want to be. So I'm not saying there won't be some negative consequences or some harm that comes, but I think your children will learn who you are and your noble self when you show up that way. And they will start to see what's happening eventually. Sometimes it takes a while. What would you add, Leslie?
I was just drawing a little picture that I think would be helpful. So ideally, so this is mom, this is dad. I'm trying to put this in the middle here. Mom and dad and children. Okay, that's what she's talking about. And ideally, the bond between mom and dad is the strongest bond in the marriage. That's God's goal for your marriage and your family. It doesn't mean that you don't have bonds with your children. Of course you do. And you want to. But what happens in this picture that she's talking about is dad has formed a bond with one child and he doesn't have this bond with his wife, right? And that's really unhealthy. And he's also trying to wreck her bond with her daughter, right? Now, in my opinion, parenting an 18-year-old is almost done. You're done parenting her. So I don't know that when you talk about should I parent her like I normally parent my other children, I don't think you parent an 18-year-old at this point, right? I think there are some boundaries, some consequences, all of those kind of things that you would have if you had a boarder in your home as well. But you love your daughter, but you don't parent her at 18. At this point, I think that role is over. If she were 8, I might have a different answer. But I do think that you're going to have to tread water really carefully because right now your husband is seeking to so he's establishing this really crazy bond with her, and she's liking that because she's getting a lot of attention out of that. But he's also trying to wreck your bond with her. So my advice to you would be is that as best you can work on a bond with her and maintaining that bond. And part of it is being empathetic towards her frustration. So here are some words that you could say. I know you love your dad, and I want you to. So that she's not sensing you're trying to break that bond, right? You're trying to obviously correct it, but that's not yours to do at this point, right? It's hers to do. You can't fix this. I know you want to love your dad. I know he's important to you. And I'm fine with that. I just don't want you to forget that I love you too. And I care about you too. And I want to have a relationship with you too. Right? Or, hey, I hope that we can talk about some things that I'm concerned about in your life. But she's 18. So these are things that this is a transition for you. It's a transition for all of us who have kids, is that we don't have the authority unless we use our financial power over them. Financial power over them is the only authority that you have. So an example of that would be in my life, I think I was 20 years old and I was going to I was going to a college. It wasn't a community college, it was a 4-year college, but I was going to a college and I wanted to date someone that my dad didn't want me to date. And he told me that if I dated that person, he would throw me out of the house. So he used financial power over me to coerce me into a decision that I didn't want to make. I did decide, I'm not going to have to move out because of this person. It wasn't like I was in love with him or anything. I was just wanted to date him. But he used financial power over me to coerce me into a decision. And I don't think that's a great strategy for relationships, right? So I wouldn't do that to an 18-year-old. I might say there's consequences if you choose to, take drugs, you can't live here, all those kind of things. But as a means to control someone, I don't think that's a great strategy. It's usually considered pretty abusive. And so I think that I would just encourage you to work on your relationship with your daughter. And then I think the real problem is, what are you going to do about your marriage? Right? Because that's your real issue, is that this bond has been broken. And so is this something that you're safe enough to name and talk about with your husband, to say, hey, your bond with our daughter is stronger than your bond with me. Where do you want to go from here? Because once our kids are out of the house, we're like two strangers. That would be the kind way to say it. Right? There are stronger ways to say it, and we certainly teach that in our coaching groups. But I think your bigger issue is not to parent her anymore. Again, if she were 8, I would have a different answer. Your bigger issue is to work on maintaining your bond with your daughter and really address the lack of bond with your husband.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for bringing out that point. Yeah, there's a big transition that comes when your children mature into adulthood. 18 officially is an adult. Mm-hmm. You take more of a coaching role, really, than a parent role.
Coaching, advisor, all of those kind of things. And so you want to work on that bond so you still have that opportunity. And if you come off as, you can't do this or this isn't right and bad girl, that's probably not going to work for an 18-year-old. It doesn't work usually for an 8-year-old as well either, but they're more dependent on you. So they often comply, and she's not going to. Plus she has a daddy as an advocate. So that's not going to help you to do that. All right, we have another question. I've been carrying the load of making sure everyone's okay while my husband drinks at night because his attitude shifts so much. And if I say anything, he says, I need to grow up. How can I let go of the worry that comes to me revolving around my husband's drinking? So he's not okay, he's drinking, and you're not okay because you're anxious about his drinking. and you're also exhausted having to carry the full load while he's getting high at night, right? So what do you think, Susan?
Well, I'm reading into that question. She's carrying the load of making sure everyone's okay. So there's other people in the home, I'm guessing. And so maybe protection over children so that they don't have to see his drinking or deal with his attitudes. But I'm not sure that that is the best thing to make sure anybody's okay. Because I think what'll happen is they'll see you as responsible and then see you as responsible for making him quit and then be upset with you when really they need to really see what he's doing and the harm of that to make their own choices of what kind of relationship they want to have with him. And so that keeping it secret or covering over the effects of his drinking and his issues with his attitude are really not going to serve you long term. They might confuse things for your children and make things harder later on if you need to create different plans. But as far as letting go of the worry, I think you're going to have feelings. You can't stop feelings revolving his drinking, but you can learn to manage them and decide how you want to behave based on the feelings that you're having. So feelings are just information that's coming in. So there may be some real worries that you're seeing. There's some real harm that's happening in the family, and to pay attention to the worry instead of getting rid of it may be a better solution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, you don't say the ages of your children. So obviously if they're toddlers or if they're infants, yeah, you're going to protect them from any consequences of his drinking. But I think as children get older, they know things are icky in the house. They don't maybe have words for it, but I think it's always better to talk about it. I think it's always better to let children know there's energy in a home. And it's, it can be positive energy. We're laughing, we're having fun. It can be negative energy. There's anger, there's tempers flaring. There can be dead energy. People are depressed. Nobody's talking to each other. It's, so there's energy in a home, and whether there's words to express what that energy is about or not, people sense the energy. You feel it. Even when you go to Thanksgiving or you go to people's gatherings, you sense the energy. Is this positive energy, negative energy, scary energy? There's just energy in the room. And so to be able to put words to that for your children is a kindness. It's not giving them bad thoughts. I'm not saying you tell them everything about everything in detail, but if they're over the age of 7 or 8 or 9 and they see daddy drinking and they see him stumbling, I wouldn't say daddy's not feeling well. I would say daddy's drinking alcohol. And sometimes when you drink alcohol, it makes you stumble. It makes you, a little dizzy. It makes you, you don't have to say it makes you act like a jerk, but you can say what it does do, so that they see, oh, this is why daddy fell down, or this is why daddy's so loud, or this is why dad. So they're not saying, oh, daddy's this way because of me or because I said the wrong thing. They have an explanation for why. So I don't know that you need to play the protector of your children. Now, if daddy's violent while he drinks, then my question to you is, what's your problem with his drinking? You're living scared. What do you want to do about your problem? Right? What do you want to do about that? And we'll unpack all this. I'll actually use, I think, alcohol in an example, or I use porn an example. He's got this problem. What do I do? And so I think the question you need to ask yourself is, what's my problem with his problem? So what's your problem with his drinking? It's leaving you without a partner because he's got another partner, his alcohol. It's leaving you without a parent because he's drinking at night. It's depending on his behaviors, whether he's a quiet drunk or a loud drunk or a mean drunk or a funny drunk, it leaves you with some consequences financially, emotionally. And what do you want to do with that? And I think this is where women start to feel paralyzed, especially Christian women, in realizing you do have choices here. You do have choices here. You're not just stuck in a prison cell once you get married. Right? I'm going to read a passage to you that I think, we read this passage in Malachi a lot. God hates divorce. And he doesn't hate divorce. That's not what it says. I'm not advocating for divorce. All right. I've been married 50 years. I believe in marriage and I believe in working on marriage. But I don't believe in pretending and lying, and neither does God. And when a marriage is dead or broken or destructive, it's time to call it for what it is. So let me read this passage to you about how God allowed divorce for the least of these, for a woman who had absolutely no status in her culture. She was a slave wife, the lowest woman on a totem pole in Exodus 21. God is saying in Exodus 21, I want you to treat slaves fairly, Jews. Don't treat them harshly, even if they're slaves. If a man who has married a slave, verse 10, if a man who has married a slave wife takes another wife for himself, he must not neglect the rights of the first wife. She had rights to food, clothing, and sexual intimacy for her protection. Sexual intimacy was for her to have children who would take care of her, right? If he fails in any of these three obligations, food, clothing, sexual intimacy, she may leave as a free woman without making any payment. Does God hate all divorce? No. He's saying God loves marriage. He created marriage to be a place for safety and love for children to flourish. And when someone breaks their covenant vows, sometimes the marriage dies. And so I just want you to know that when you're in these situations as a woman, don't feel like you don't have options. You do, but you may need some help in getting to those options and learning about those options and feeling comfortable with those options, in even getting strong enough in the Lord to really take those options. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Malachi 2 in context for sure. We want to understand God's heart. You know, you could take something out of my book, The Emotionally Destructive Marriage, and say, "Oh, Leslie Bernick said this," and I did, but I also said this, and you don't know me, and so you can't just take a sentence out of a book and say, "Oh, this is what this person believes in this." You can't say, "I believe in this" by one sentence in my book. And we can't say that God believes in something in one sentence in his book. We look at the character of God by reading the book, the whole book, and looking at Jesus, because he said, I am perfectly representing the character of God to you. I am the exact representation of the nature of God. Well, how did Jesus treat women? How did Jesus treat those who were oppressed? How did Jesus interact with people? Not like some of our church pastors do, that's for sure, right? Not like some of our Christian counselors have, with scolding and rules. And if you don't do this, you're bad and you're going to hell. If you don't love unconditionally and stay forever. And that's just not true. And I think many of them mean well because they were taught wrong. But let's just look at Jesus and look at how he interacted. Even the woman who was caught in adultery, she was wrong. And he said, you who are without sin, cast the first stone. So that's how we be caring. We're not judgmental toward these men who may be immature, who may be dysfunctional, drinking, watching porn, whatever. We're not judgmental. God tells us not to judge. Love. We care about them. But caring about them, we care about them as God cares about them. We don't care about them and then enable them to continue to function in a dysfunctional way. We care about them and we have boundaries and consequences sometimes because their actions are sinful and destructive, and sometimes those boundaries and consequences make them matter, and sometimes they make them repent and look at themselves and change. Mm-hmm. Susan, anything else you want to say before, while Susan's sharing her final thoughts? I want you to write your takeaway from today. Mm-hmm. What's the takeaway from today for you? What's God saying to you from all the things we've said? Caring is not caring, and caring doesn't mean you have to carry someone's burden. Mm-hmm. They may have to find their own socks, right? I don't have to find your socks. You're capable of finding your socks. Don't do for someone else what they're capable of doing, especially as a grown-up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we do want to hear your takeaways in the chat. What's coming out for you as we've been together nearly an hour here? I've been trying to follow along in the chat just a bit as we've been going along, and I'm reading that, there's resentment that comes up for you, right? When you're carrying for somebody else, there's worry that comes up, there's anxiety, there's sometimes false sense of guilt, right, that you feel. It's important to really pay attention to that, what your body is telling you, what your emotions are telling you, not just to shove it away or try to get rid of it, but to really use that as information. Why is this happening? And what do I need to do about it? Right? And that's why Leslie's doing this webinar. And I hope that you can join, because I think it really will help you to see how to focus on yourself, how to steward yourself well, how to use your emotions and your body as a way to teach you what you need so that you can start giving yourself the stewarding that you need and God is calling you to, rather than focusing on external problems, somebody else's problems, is to focus internally to how do I care for myself well and to live out the purpose God has for me.
Yeah. And Susan, you said that so well. And so I'm just going to leave you with this. Resentment isn't there to make you feel guilty. Like, oh, I'm so resentful. I'm so bitter. I'm so angry. Resentment is there to warn you, you are carrying something you shouldn't be carrying. Right? Our feelings are there to inform us. Quit carrying that load. That's not your load to carry. That's why you're resentful.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so this is really important, that we don't put a guilt trip on ourselves or even others, but that we recognize that our feelings are there. Just like when your car starts sputtering, it's telling you something's wrong. Pay attention, right? Pay attention. You don't beat your car up or why are you telling me this? I'm telling you, our tires are low. You better get some air in there. And it's giving you information so that you can take corrective action. And your bad feelings, depression, anxiety, anger, resentment are letting you know you're running out of gas. Your motor is dying. You need better capacity. Get the help you need. Not, oh, what's wrong with me? I'm not godly. You're not God. That's what it's telling you. You're not God. You may be overfunctioning trying to be godly. And so just keep that in mind. Tomorrow, I'm going to be here at 7:30 Eastern time, and I'm going to be talking about, why am I exhausted when nothing looks wrong? Exhaustion is a warning bell. Just like check oil on your engine is a warning bell. Tires pressure's low is a warning bell in your car, right? So nothing may look wrong. Your car is still running. Why am I so exhausted? Come tomorrow night and we will talk about that, because we really want Christian women not to get bold like the world wants you to, like, hey, I'm not taking that anymore. All that curse words that come out of people's mouths, even in the church these days. That's not what we want to help you do. We want you to help stand strong in a godly way and say, this isn't mine to carry. I love you, but this isn't mine to carry. Whether you say that with your words or it's in your spirit and heart, there's no reason for you to feel guilty or responsible for not carrying their load. It's their job to learn to carry their load. Whether it's your child or your adult child or your husband or your mother, it's their job to carry their load. And if they can't carry their load, then help them within your capacity. But just like a child who needs a wheelchair, you can't carry that child anymore. They need a wheelchair. It's not your capacity to carry them on your back 24/7. You can't do it. And if you did, you would be resentful and exhausted. Telling you something, can't do it. This isn't my load to carry. All right. So hope you take those away with you, and we'll get our Facebook fixed, and we'll talk to you tomorrow night. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you, Leslie. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.